of you. My name is Auðbergur Gíslason. I'm called Uppi. I'm an Icelandic designer living in Stockholm, Sweden. Now, I want to do a little experiment. A show of hands. How many of you have ever come across a door like this, where you have no idea whether you're supposed to pull the door or push the door, and you end up slamming into the door like that? Many of you have had that experience. These are called Norman doors, named after Professor Don Norman, often called the father of UX design. He wrote the book, The Design of Everyday Things. Norman doors are everywhere, and they're all terrible. There's almost no way of knowing how to use them, yet it's just a door. But there's doors literally everywhere. These kinds of doors are unintuitive. Let's do this again. How many of you have ever walked out the door at home, closed it behind you, only to think a few moments later, did I remember to lock the door? Almost everyone has had that experience. This happens because we know those doors so well, and we're so used to doing it that we don't even think about it. It's just something that happens. So a door is definitely not just a door. And I found out the hard way that elevators are also not just elevators. You see, in my home, there are two identical elevators next to each other. I always use the one on the left because I'm a creature of habit and it's closer to my apartment. But in maybe 10% of the time, I use the one on the left when the one on the right is broken down or somewhere else. But for some reason, some genius that set up these elevators decided that the boards for the buttons in the elevators should not be identical. So every single time I step into the one on the right, the one I'm not used to, I press the wrong button. Every single time. It's because these button boards are lacking consistency. Now imagine if this would happen on our phones. So let's say 10% of the time our phone called, the buttons for accept and decline got reversed. It would be really confusing. There would be no consistency. So we would either, 10% of the time, decline a call when we were trying to accept it, or, which might be worse, every single time our phone called, we would have to look at it actively deciding whether to push the green or the red button. Now, products can either be complex or simple, but there's another dimension to that. Using a product can sometimes have serious consequences if we do it wrong, or it can be unconsequential. Norman doors and the elevator buttons they're a little bit frustrating. They're not that complex, and they don't really have any consequences if we use them wrong. Things like remembering to fill up the car with gas is consequential if we don't do it, but it's relatively simple for us. The crossword puzzles on Sundays can be pretty complex, but not consequential if we don't do it or if we do it wrong. But in the upper right corner there, we have a space. And oftentimes, this is where the services of the public sector end up. These are things like our tax reports, applying for some licenses. Many things that happen in the public sector end up there. They are oftentimes complex, and they can be really consequential to us if we don't do them or do them wrong. But the thing with the public sector is that we don't always have a choice. We most often have to use the products of the public sector. We can't just run around and do our tax reports with a private company instead. Therefore, I think it's our duty when we design for the public sector to create clear designs that are familiar to us. And we are only able to do that by consistency. And we achieve consistency by using design systems. Now, What are design systems? Design systems bring visual and functional harmony. Design systems consist of, number one, standards. Those are things like colors, fonts, spacing, and grids. And number two, from those standards, we're able to create reusable components. So a design system is basically a creative universe. But universes can actually be pretty complex to build. I don't know if you've heard about this, but there's one guy that claims he did it in 6 days and rested for 1. It was even complex for him. So how can we simplify this process of creating universes? Let me introduce Brad Frost. Almost 8 years ago, he published this book, Atomic Design. It's a mechanism to think of design as made from small particles that are combined into larger particles. Just like with real atoms, there are subatomic things, and within design system, these things are the colors, the fonts, the sizings, the grids, the radiuses, and so on. And they control how our atoms look. And with these atoms, we're able to build larger things called molecules, and with these molecules we build organisms, and with the organisms we build templates, and we use these templates to create pages. Let's take a look. Here we have a component library on the bottom, and we'll drag some of these components and put them together to form an organism. We add more things, and we have a template. And we add in real data to create a page, a usable page. Now let's think of a design system that we all know. The most creative design system in the world, and one of the largest design systems in the world, and one of the oldest man-made design systems in the world, is a design system all of you know, and all of you love. And we've all done so since we were kids. It's, of course, Lego. Lego is one of the greatest design systems in the world. It's built on a grid. It has standardized colors. It has atoms made by some great designers in Denmark. And those atoms fit perfectly together to create larger components. We can create whatever we want out of these atoms. And the Lego design system brings along perfect visual and functional harmony. So what are the benefits of a design system? Well, number one, I would say accessibility, which is super important, especially in the public sector, where we don't have a choice to use something else. Now, webaim.org, they run this test among the top 1 million websites in the world every year. And this year, they came across 56.8 million accessibility errors among those 1 million websites. Meaning, we see, on average, 56.8 accessibility errors per page or per website. And that's almost a 14% increase since last year. So we're on a backwards trend here. If we make components that are accessible, that we have tested, that work, then the next time we use them, when we reuse them, they are also accessible and they will work. So by reusing components, we can spend more time on making them accessible, and they will be accessible down the line. Number two, efficiency. Of course, when we reuse components, it means we will be able to develop and design things faster going forward. And faster, of course, means cheaper, which is especially great in the public sector because it's our money, isn't it? And number three, maintainability. Now, design systems, of course, need to change with time. And when they become large monsters, it can get out of hand relatively quickly, unless it's an atomic design. Let's say we wanted to rebrand our product or our product catalog or our company. We would simply do that on the subatomic and atomic level. We could change colors, we could change radiuses, we could change the feeling, the font, so on and so on. Then we would simply push that. We would just push it into the molecules, the organisms, the larger products, without needing to do major coding changes. So accessibility, efficiency, and maintainability. During the last 2 years, I was working as a product designer, digital product designer at the City of Reykjavík, capital of Iceland. Now, Iceland has a tiny, tiny population of only 380,000 people. It's less than half of the population of Krakow. And of those 380,000, roughly a third lives in Reykjavík. Despite those tiny population numbers, Iceland is among the best when it comes to digital infrastructure. Our banking, insurance infrastructure, and the governmental infrastructures are really, really great, and they're getting better every year. Now, at the City of Reykjavík, I was in charge of the city's design system called Hana. Hana is both, of course, a female name, and it also means to design in Icelandic, so it's pretty clever. But when I arrived there, we were facing a few issues. The first issues we came across was that there was a lot of design debt. We were just lacking components to work with. So, of course, what we wanted to do was start designing. We wanted to close that design gap. But we soon figured out a few more issues. First of all, the system wasn't built on atomic design principles. And since it wasn't built on atomic design principles, it didn't have the correct standards for us to build the system. So we wanted to start creating standards. But then we faced another problem, which was something we had to tackle at the beginning. We were lacking the proper psychological safety within the team. It was a relatively young team, great talents, but relatively young. So the team was not fully used to getting creative criticism or feedback. So we had to work with that, and we were able to do that, and it worked out fantastically for us. But only by doing that, by creating a psychologically safe space for us, we were able to get together and get behind everything we wanted to do. So we were able to create standards that we were willing to defend when we needed to defend them, which was super important. And once we had created the correct standards, we were able to start creating atomic designs and close the design gap. HANA standards live on a website that houses all the standards and fundamentals. And the design system is huge and ever-growing. It's, of course, now built using the atomic design standards, where we build atoms at first. Those are combined into molecules, and then those are combined into organisms, working organisms. Again, atoms become molecules, atoms and molecules become organisms. Now, what does the future hold for design systems? Of course, everybody gets a design system. But not everybody will get their own design system, in my view. I think we will see a few large design systems rule the world, because not everybody needs to develop their own design system, and not everybody is equipped to design their own design systems. Right now, we have many great large design systems, like from Atlassian, Google, or IBM. But I think we will see more of those I think we'll see many subscriptions-based, and I think we will see a lot of them where we can actually customize the sub-atoms of the system, meaning we will be able to change the colors, the fonts, the spacings, radiuses, and so on, of a system that is not built by us. This means that we can fundamentally change the look and feel of a web page or an app or a product just by changing these sub-atom particles. And it doesn't need any major coding. One of the questions I get the most when discussing design systems is, won't it kill creativity? I don't think so. We have to remember that design systems should not be the goal in and of themselves. Design systems should be tools for us in order to get to great digital designs, great digital products. So design systems are a tool, not a goal. Just remember that Lego, that makes the atoms for us. But we still feel creative when we're using Legos, don't we? We make the components ourselves from the particles that the people in Denmark have made for us. So it definitely won't kill creativity, but it will be a different creativity than we're used to. We won't spend as much time on designing buttons or finding that perfect red color for the error messages. But I know all designers, we all love spending time on that. And because the internet is growing up, we don't want to have to keep inventing the wheel. We don't have to keep inventing the wheel. It has been invented and it's working pretty good in many cases, like for instance, when it comes to sign-up pages. There's no need to revamp or like fundamentally change sign-up pages every time we design one. They're usually the same. You put in maybe your name and then your email and your password, or you can sign up with Google or Facebook or Apple or whatever. So creativity is elsewhere. There's also some outside factors that will change design systems in the future. Designs will, of course, mature. Our tastes will change. Things will change, just like they have in the past years. But our devices will also change. And if we just take a look at the lineup of Apple currently, we have the Mac, we have iPads, we have iPhones, we have the Apple TV that's stuck somewhere in your home, and then we have the Apple Watch that's always stuck on your wrist. You can take it with you everywhere. And all of these devices have two-dimensional screens. But just a couple of months ago, Apple introduced something called Apple Vision Pro, their first spatial computing device that you can actually control with your eyes and fingertips. So these things will change the way we use our devices. And we're also starting to talk to our devices. And we will do a lot more of that in the future. This will change the way we think of UI and UX in the coming years. So we definitely need to think of design systems in a new way going forward. I love challenging myself. And last year, I challenged myself with one of the best challenges I've ever had. And I wanted to read one book per week. And I ended actually reading 55 books. So I did it. But how was I able to do it? I happen to know a few languages, and I know the Latin alphabet. And of course, this is a design system. The letters in the alphabet form words from the languages we know. And those words become sentences. And those sentences become pages, and the pages become chapters in books. It's a system we know by heart. Now, imagine a world where all of our digital solutions are just intuitive, where everything digital we use just works. We don't have to think about it. Where it works just like when we leave our house in the morning and we close the door behind us without thinking about it. I believe this is possible. I believe this is the future. And I believe we will be able to achieve this through atomic design systems. Now, please join me on the journey to great digital designs. Thank you very much.